The Trump administration now says a small number of U.S. troops may stay in Syria. The shift comes after the president's plan to withdraw all American forces was criticized by Democrats and Republicans. Some troops may be kept to protect oil fields from ISIS. And with a temporary ceasefire set to expire on Tuesday, hundreds of thousands of Kurds are also fleeing the area. Foreign correspondent Holly Williams has the story from the Syrian border with Turkey, where American troops received a hostile send-off.
Those are potatoes and other objects being thrown at an American convoy by furious locals in northeastern Syria today. They also hurled abuse. In this part of the world, the US was popular, even beloved.
Have these buildings been cleared?
Kurdish-led forces were America's closest partners on the ground in the fight against ISIS in Syria. Now they say they've been betrayed. As American troops withdraw to neighbouring Iraq, the Kurds have invited Syrian regime forces into their territory. 200,000 civilians have reportedly fled the clashes with Turkey. Mr. President, what makes you think you have the right to drive millions of Kurds out of their homes? Tweeted a Kurdish spokesman. Isn't this ethnic cleansing? Turkey says it isn't targeting civilians and regards the Kurdish-led forces as a terrorist group. This morning, President Trump weighed in.
We never agreed to protect the Kurds for the rest of their lives. We're not going to take a position. Let them fight themselves.
President Erdogan has threatened to, quote, crush the heads of the Kurdish fighters if they don't withdraw from the border by tomorrow night. Though the US said on Monday that it's now considering leaving around 200 troops in eastern Syria, it's Russia that's poised to step into the power vacuum the US has left behind. The future of eastern Syria could be decided on Tuesday when Turkey's President Erdogan meets Russian President Vladimir Putin. Elaine?
Holly Williams, thank you. Dave Sears is a former U.S. Navy SEAL, and he joins me now from Washington. Dave, thanks so much for being with us. As we just heard Holly mention, sources tell CBS News the White House is now considering keeping 200 troops in northeastern Syria. What would their mission be?
Well, I think the Secretary of Defense talked on one piece is to watch over the oil in east Syria. That's a large portion, and they kind of don't want them to fall in the hands of ISIS in order to generate revenue for ISIS, and also not to fall into the hands of Iran. So they can kind of be a strategic bargaining chip a little bit.
You broke up a little bit there, Dave, but I heard you say that this would be essentially a mission to protect those oil fields in Syria from ISIS. Are 200 U.S. troops enough to block the Syrian government and Russian forces, for instance, from taking over those Kurdish-held oil fields?
No, not if it actually comes down to it. But it's the same idea of a little bit pulling back from Turkey and withdrawing the thousands there. So if Turkey decides that they're coming with their full forces, we don't have enough to actually stop them and go full war with them. So the idea is that American flag is still planted there to some extent with these 200 forces, and Russia or Turkey or Syria or ISIS would have to call our bluff and say, we're going to overrun those forces.
Well, as we've been reporting, about 1,000 U.S. troops are now moving from Syria into Iraq. What is the strategic benefit of transferring them to that location?
I think that they just get them out of the line of fire. We don't know the conversations that President Trump had with Erdogan. And if President Erdogan said, I don't really care if you're there or not, I'm coming, then you have to make a decision. Are you going to go to war with Turkey, a NATO ally, or are you going to move your pieces off the board so that he can do what he's wanted to do?
So from your perspective, based on your experience, Dave, as a U.S. Navy SEAL, has there been a consistent message when it comes to this administration's plans for Syria? And how does that affect the ability of troops on the ground to carry out orders?
Those are two sort of separate questions, I think. I'll take the first part. Is on the ground, you follow orders that you're given, and you're not looking for the long-term strategic view. In reality, a lot of those guys on the ground, they're there to survive day to day and do the tactical mission that they know how to do. Now, if that changes, which it does all the time, then they adjust to that. It does make it difficult to make relationships and long-term relationships with people on the ground, different soldiers that you want fighting with you, partner nations. That can become difficult if they're not sure where you stand. But the reality is that, it's not just this administration. It was the previous administration and the administration before that nobody's been clear or articulate on any strategic policy in the Middle East or extend that over to Southeast Asia and Afghanistan. We have been just bumbling along with no clear strategy at all.
Well, President Trump said that it will be Turkey's responsibility to take over the fight against ISIS in Syria. Based on your knowledge, is Turkey likely to take that on?
I think that they will to protect themselves. I don't think that they will push deep into Syria to help with that. That's going to be taken on a lot by Russia. I think Russia, and you have to remember, Russia is no friend to ISIS. Russia's definitely not going to be setting up prisoner camps. Now, their humane record is not good, and I don't think that they'll treat ISIS very humanely either. That said, you still have, and that's why we leave troops in Iraq, so that if they do start flushing towards Iraq, we're able to defend those portions of Iraq and keep that from happening. That's why they had troops down near Al-Tant on the border sort of with Jordan and Israel to help buffer that as well. But I think that you could see ISIS get heavily squished between Turkey and Russia.
All right, Dave Sears, thank you so much for sharing your perspective with us.
Thanks, Elaine.